So welcome everyone to another podcast episode. And today I have a pleasure of speaking with Fiona Parr. Hello, Fiona. Welcome.
Hello, Annetta. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me. So Fiona is a focusing teacher and practitioner and Focusing Institute coordinator offering professional trainings. And I had a real pleasure and privilege to study with Fiona and learn about focusing. And for me, Fiona, you are, I don't know, an embodiment of focusing. I absolutely love the training, and I think it's such a wonderful practice. And for me, it was certainly a missing link that connected other practices and that allowed me to connect with, my presence, that inner presence in a different way, and actually start building inner relationships with different parts of me. But before we go into the focusing and what it is and how it's different and how people can connect with that embodied wisdom, I'd love to hear a little bit about your story. How did you end up teaching focusing and sharing it with other people?
Okay, yes, I can share a little of my background and my story. I first came across focusing in, I think it was 1990. Before then, I had been traveling around the world, teaching dance and meditation. And it was a wonderful thing to be doing. I had been at Findhorn Foundation prior to that. And learnt this practice, sacred dance, which has got a long history about that. And when I left Findhorn, I was there 5 years. What I took of value, there were many, many things, and this meditation and dance practice I took out with me that I could share with others. And it was a wonderful thing to do. I loved it and traveled the world. However, I was getting burnt out with it. I was on my own. I was holding groups and not really having enough personal support for the work that I was doing. And I also wasn't earning enough. It was it was really on a shoestring I was doing this. Although I loved it, I did end up being kind of burnt out. So a friend of mine said, well, look, why don't you try focusing? I'm doing that. I've had, come across it and I'm just going to do an evening class. So that's where I first came across it as a sort of bridge or a crossroads or a real self-care and not knowing what was coming next. So actually, I sort of put it aside for a while after I'd learnt the class. I think because I was in a bit of an inner state, I couldn't really take it on board. And then there were friends of mine who had taken it on board. It was about a year later. And they said, "Look, come and join our group. We've got a practice group going on." So finally, I was persuaded to join them. And it was a little group of 4 of us, and we did peer partnering and swap sessions in this focusing way of being. And we met fortnightly, for 18 years.
Wow.
So, yes, I feel quite emotional even saying that now. I mean, it's a long time ago, but for me, it was like a life support system. It really got me back on track, and it helped with everyday stuff that was going on for me, ups and downs and issues that I was dealing with. So it really gave me a lot of nourishment. And I also really enjoy its ethos of, air quotes, sort of giving therapy away, empowering people. Once you've learned how you can listen to yourself and practice in pairs and hold the space for someone else to do the same, do its changes, and it's like very democratic, very equal way of being for personal support and really empowerment and development. So uh, I did come into some money. I had an inheritance about 10 years later. And I thought, right, I'm going to do some training. And what's it going to be? And this is the one out of all the many, many wonderful things there are out there. This is the one that really drew me because of this empowerment aspect to it, and because it also connects for me to my spirituality, which is really, really important to me. It's about embodiment, and it's about living a spiritual life in whatever way that means for everybody. But for me, it dovetails very much because my spirituality for me is embodied. I could feel it bodily. Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. It's such and I love hearing about your journey. And burnout, it's such a big thing. Not only in social care, in kind of caring professions, but in, even when, like, in your story, on your journey, doing something that you love, if you don't have systems in place like support, if you're not earning money, which is a big concern, and then leads to a lot of anxiety and worry, it can really lead so easily to burnout. Yeah. Yeah. And so how may I ask, how many years have you been now teaching others focusing?
Yes. Well, it was 2000 when I started the training, 2001 when I started teaching and working one-to-one with people. So, yeah, 23 years now.
Wow.
So, yes,
Good chunk of time, lots of experience.
good chunk of time. And it just continues to enrich me and fulfill my life and touches others.
Yeah.
And there's so much more to learn. I'll just say briefly about focusing that it has a huge philosophical base and a huge theoretical base. So, yes, based on research and philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that you just said, that it takes you deeper. And I remember when I first came across focusing and just like thinking, well, of course, this is so straightforward. And when I signed up for your course, like I think there are 5 modules initially. I was like, what are we going to be learning over that, over the year? I mean, it's like it's so straightforward and so simple till you actually start doing it and being in that space, and then it takes you deeper and deeper and deeper. And yes, it is simple in understanding of what you need to do, but actually the experience becomes richer and richer and richer the more you do it, which is one of the most amazing things ever. So I wonder, if I could ask you, what makes focusing different? I mean, I know that you said already that it's got a lot of philosophy and, the
Lot of theory.
theory behind it. Could
Yes.
you say a little bit more about this? And
Yes. It's based on Gene Gendlin's philosophy and research. He worked with Carl Rogers, person-centered therapy. And together they were researching what makes therapy successful. When does it work? When does it not? And what Gene Gendlin was observing by listening to recorded therapy sessions, he was identifying closely what people were actually doing, what the clients were doing when they were talking to their therapist. And he was able to say from his research what would make therapy successful was when people started to become a little bit inarticulate. And that's because they were not just telling a story. They were not just telling this happened, that happened, telling. They were beginning to really check in with themselves as to what they were saying and how they actually felt. So, yes, paying attention to feelings is one thing. But beyond that, there's what we might call really slowing down to the extent that we could call it a pause and looking for when something is unclear. And I think this links into why it's not so widely known. It's because in our culture, we have to know the answer. We're expected to know immediately. Come on, what are you going to say about that? People are impatient. People, they don't want to wait. So if we're willing to wait with something that's unclear, something happens in that moment. And it can be very uncomfortable because we're so used to wanting clarity. And then eventually, maybe even 30 seconds, feels like a long time. Something emerges. And what emerges is some kind of shift or clarity or insight or perhaps an image or what's it like, which leads on to another micro shift. So the process is a series of pausing, listening, and micro shift, which eventually leads into some kind of resolution. It's providing the right conditions for the body process to live forward, to live itself. If it were given the space to do that, what would it say? What would it do? How would it be? So we don't know that. So it's being willing to stay with not knowing, which can be uncomfortable, to stay with what's not clear. And things do become clear in that space.
Oh my God, this is huge. And I was just thinking everything that you said, we live in such a solution-focused society. In a society where there is 5 steps to this and 3 steps to that, and this is a roadmap for, and this is methodology for, this is how you do it right, this is how you do it fast, this is how here is the shortcut, and and that what you just said, I remember even last week having conversations in the training circle with other practitioners, and it's like acknowledging being with unknown is not only uncomfortable but feels unsafe. It can feel really, really, really unsafe. And so having that space of slowing down and being with it, where everything in our society is about numbing it out and moving as fast forward as we can, achieving, doing, sorting out, is quite a radical approach.
Yes, I feel it is a radical approach, and that's what excites me about it.
Mm.
And I would like to say something about safety and unsafety, because it can be very scary and it can feel unsafe. So there are ways of making sure that we are safe in this situation, that we actually know that we are. And if we're not safe, then we don't do it. So, for instance, if it doesn't feel safe to go into the body experience, for many people it doesn't. and for good reason. So there are ways in focusing that we can address that. And it doesn't have to be bodily felt. I'm saying that it is, but it doesn't have to be. What we're doing is we're going to our experience or our life situation. How is it to be in that situation? So it doesn't have to be bodily felt. The other safety thing is what we call a shortcut, naming it as presence. And presence simply means, I'm just pausing there, what it does mean. I would say it's all of me, really. And this is, you talked about parts. Presence is like showing up, being here, and present to all of me. And in that space, and being grounded and connected in a physical way. And then we can begin to listen to parts of us that may feel scared or unsafe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that.
Another one we can do, which is important, is to have pairs, to have a listening companion. And so with two people there holding the space, it's not one holding the space for the other, it's both. So, yes, so we call them the focuser, and they are holding the space for their own process. And the companion or the focusing partner is also there with supporting.
Yeah. It's really interesting because I remember learning right at the beginning, focusing, and what I so loved about it and still love about this is this sense of empowerment, this sense of that it was very clear. I was told, and it was very clear in the holding space in practices that I could say I don't want to do it. I could come out. I could share as much as I wanted, or as little as I wanted, or nothing. I could like the power, the choice was in my own hands. I found it so very empowering after done loads of different forms of therapy and practices where it was much more structured, and that power dynamic was much more with the therapist or with the practitioner, but not with me as a client or as a patient or as a person who was going through the practices or learning practices. So I find, I found that really, really empowering and wonderful. My whole being really embraced it wholeheartedly. And and the other thing that comes to mind is this memory of always arriving at your training sessions and, being so busy and so kind of in that sympathetic response of doing and doing and doing and really, and I always used to feel like I would arrive and just land with a big bang on my bottom in the
such
sessions.
a relief in some way.
Yeah, and because the pace was so different from, me working and doing things and daily life to arriving, as you just said, this series of pauses, this just, take a breath, reconnect with your body, not from the different parts and doing, but just from here and now, the wholeness, being in a state of presence. And not just in meditation, but in the interaction with others. And amazing. And I guess that, that takes me to that question that you've heard me say that question before and the frustration that sometimes I feel around it. And this is why, the question, why is focusing not known better? Because when I go into the world and the different practices and different methodologies that people offer, some of them definitely include focusing, like, for example, Peter Levine's Somatic experiencing. And he actually talks about using journaling and that he is using focusing as part of his methodology. But there are other practices that use similar kind of approaches and even language, like felt sense and parts, like internal family systems, IFS. But they're much more structured and then much more well known and embraced by people. So why do you think that is?
I think, yes, we talked about how difficult it is for people to slow down, and how clarity and instant response is what's expected, and solution-based is what you're saying also in our culture a lot. It's very unfamiliar to look for what's unclear. And people do like a structure. They do like, it's very understandable. That's, people think that's where their safety lies, is they know what they're doing, they have a structure. I did a level one time with a little group of people, and at the end of it, I was saying, I hope you got something from this. And somebody said, well, yeah, but can you give me a shortcut to all of this? This is what we do in our culture. We look for the shortcut, and we look for do this and you'll get sorted,
and fixed.
And fixed. They don't. It's not generally said. Look for what's unclear, pause, and stay with that. That is so countercultural, really. And yeah, I think, it's not easy for people to take on board that actually the body process has its own timing, different from what we have.
God, that's huge. That is huge.
Yeah.
Because so often we just ignore what body is saying, and we follow the mind, and
what I need to do is this and that.
I've got no time for this. I've got to. Doesn't matter that the body wants to slow down. I've got to do this. I've got deadlines.
Yes. Yes. So
really
it's not
interesting.
Easy. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And something that you said that as well. It's I still remember the shift within me at some point as I was studying with you. Of really shifting from fixing, like I'm doing it because I want to fix things, I want to feel better, I want to understand, I want to this way of understanding, well, that's another layer of understanding, or a different understanding within the context of this life situation. And I remember when I really understood that it's not, like really understood on an embodied level, that this is not about fixing. Like this is not about getting rid of my critical parts or, but it's about just really relating and noticing what's coming up and not getting rid of something, but just embracing it in a different way. I mean,
That's so important what you're saying.
It had a huge, huge impact on me. And I know that I say that to other people when we're doing training or when we exploring certain things. And I can see that people just glaze over quite often. They just don't understand it. And I know that they are still where I was in this fixing. Let's fix it. I'm doing it. I want to learn it because I want to fix something. I want to get rid of something uncomfortable, and I want to feel better, and I want to move on.
Yes, yes. very natural human way of being. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder if somebody wanted to start this process,
Mhm.
because I remember you saying, um, and Eugene Gendlin also talked about this, that it's something natural that we do. That
Mhm.
yes, we can learn it, and many of us lost it through this process of growing up and being conditioned.
Mhm.
But it is a natural process that we have within us. So I wonder if somebody wanted to start connecting more with that inner wisdom of their body,
Mhm.
how could they start doing it? Is there something that you would advise that would be accessible to
Mhm.
people?
Mm. Yes, I would say simply a pause. Um, you can sort of like bus stop focusing, or, just when you've got a moment, uh, if, a couple of minutes, just pause and take your attention inside. And that may mean into the body, or it may mean into your experience or your life situation. And pause, and you could just ask, well, how am I right now? Uh, and then pause with that and wait and see what comes. Uh, and more does come if you wait.
Yeah, lovely.
Mhm.
Pausing.
Pausing. And it's also knowing what to look for, because in a pause, if we're pausing in meditation, we can be aware of thoughts that come very quickly, or feelings. And in meditation, you maybe return to the breath or whatever your focus is. But in focusing, you pay attention to what's arising in the moment. You don't uh, leave it aside to return to the meditation. What you do is you bring it to the center of your awareness. Okay, this is happening. I see. Acknowledging it is another really key thing that you can do. And to acknowledge it is to say, yeah, that's there. I see that, or I get it. Or, okay, almost like you're starting to be friendly to yourself. Okay, well, how is it with me right now? How does it feel inside? And when the inside places start to tell you, then you listen and be friendly. Make a large accepting space for whatever comes.
I love that. So yeah, bringing it to the center, making space, acknowledging, letting it know that you hear it,
Mm.
that you acknowledging whether it's struggling or it's trying to show you something or it's joyful or whatever
Yes.
it is. It's
Yes.
very different to it's very different to meditation,
Mm.
isn't it? It's
Mm.
where I remember, again, that's from my experience of just thinking right at the beginning. It's like, oh, there is like, I'm trying to be with something and there is this niggly thought that keeps coming back,
Mm. Mm.
getting rid of it. And then, understanding, okay, that's niggly thought is part of it. It's telling me
Mm.
something. Can I bring it in as part of
Yes.
my
Part,
experience in
part
this
of your
moment?
experience.
Yeah.
Yes. So we're not pushing anything away. We're not denying things. And we're also not overwhelmed. That's one of the key questions I often get early on. Um, if I really went inside, I'd be overwhelmed. So what we're doing in focusing is finding the right distance, uh, so we can be with whatever comes up. And I spoke about presence, just finding a place where all of you can show up and just be with whatever comes.
Yeah.
And then being with it in a friendly, accepting way, being our own best friend. And including with those critical voices, because, many of us have that. Um, Yeah. Listening to
Yes.
that too.
Yeah, those critical voices. I mean, I often just think that they are just parts of us that got shitty social skills. Rather than saying that, I care about you, I'm worried about you, they just shout at you to get your attention.
Yes, yes, that's a good way of seeing it. Yes, indeed. They have got something they want to say, these critical voices. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're worried for us about something. Mm.
Yeah. I mean, there are so many, you said when you were talking about your personal journey that focusing helped you in daily life,
Mm.
in, in, uh, yeah, in daily life. And I
Yes.
think that's one of the most amazing things about focusing, that it helps us to understand what's going on. And as you said, become our own best friend,
Mm.
and have that space and, acknowledgement of what's going on for us, rather than trying to fix it all the time or deny it or improve it um, or numb it out.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah.
So there is something very important here about the inner relationship. Can I be with whatever's there
Yeah.
in an accepting way? And really, paradoxically, that's what leads to change. That's what leads to shifts happening. Uh, More than trying to fix, is being very open, very accepting, warm and friendly with ourselves. And that allows the life energy to heal, to take
Mhm.
us forward. Yeah.
That's another thing that is kind of makes focusing really different, isn't it? It's this understanding that you don't need a tool, you don't need a technique, you don't need 3 steps or 5 steps.
Mhm.
You don't have to follow certain kind of pattern, but it's this being with. And I wonder if you can say a little bit more about this, please.
Yes, being with. You're absolutely right. It's not about fixing ourselves or taking, following a certain methodology. Um, it's, as I said at the beginning, it's based on philosophy, um, and it's the philosophy of the implicit. So, what's inside us may be implicit and is not explicitly felt or explicitly expressed, but it's there anyway. Like you say, our conditioning and all of who we are uh, informs how we relate to ourselves. So yes, so it's just being with whatever comes. Um, Provides the space for the light energy or what's implied here to give it the space, really, more than what I think. I'm giving it, the life energy in me, the space to do what it needs to do. And, we can see how the body heals itself from, very naturally. If there's a cut on my finger, after, a couple of weeks, it'll heal, wounds heal. We have amazing self-healing capacity. Uh, so yes, it's giving it the right conditions and the right space for a natural healing process to happen. What Jenling called carrying forward. If something in us is stuck, and unable to move, if we give it the space, it can open of its own, and it can carry forward in a way that we can't even predict. We wouldn't even know. Often it's a surprise what comes. It does
Mm.
it by itself. So, I'm just amazed. Each focusing session I witness or each focusing session I participate in, I'm just surprised what comes. Yeah, it's like
Mm.
a real gift. Yeah.
Such a amazing and healing way of being.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. It
Lovely.
is. Yeah.
So I guess I wanted to ask one question, one more question, because we talked about the burnout, and I know that, as there are so many people that are struggling with overwhelm, with burnout,
Mm,
with just struggling with the sheer volume and intensity of data and information and commitments and
mm,
way of working and the news in the world. The last few
mm,
years have been really, really challenging with the pandemic and the wars and the
mm.
conflict and the economic crisis. And, there is so much
And climate change.
climate change. Yeah.
Yes.
There's so much
Yeah.
in here. And
Yes.
I wonder, how could focusing help with something like that? I mean, how could we start bring it a little bit more when we are dealing with those difficulties?
Mm, mm. Yes, indeed. I think it really, really helps to have this kind of uh, peer support and capacity to really listen to ourselves from a place of presence, grounded and embodied, uh, giving ourselves the space because we can just get so caught up in everything. Like you say, there's so much going on. And uh, just to have a moment's pause, just to really listen inside, to acknowledge how it all feels, helps to settle the whole energy system down. And there are many ways of doing that, but this is really allowing um, what's truly there to carry forward. What's wanted here, so we can look for what's wanted and wait and ask that question and allow and give the space for that. And also, I feel it is hugely empowering. So, yeah.
Yeah. Lovely. Thank you, Fiona.
Mm.
Thank you so much for joining me today. It's as always, it's a real pleasure speaking with you. And I wanted to ask if people wanted to find out more about your trainings and your work,
Mhm.
where can they find you?
Yes, I have a website. Um, so we're going to put that
Yes, I'm going to
there.
share it with. Yeah.
So yes, and I offer sessions if people would like to try it out. And also I have a monthly focusing tips newsletter. So you can ask a question, anything that's come up from today's talk, send it to me, and I can answer in a focusing tips. And also on my website, I've got past tips. They're short articles; they're not too long, uh, which explains a bit more. So that's my own work, and you can also check out the British Focusing website, which is focusing.org.uk, and see what else is going on.
Brilliant. Thank you. And they also have got lots of really great articles
Mm,
in there from different professionals working with focusing as part of what they offer.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really, really amazing stuff. Thank you so much, Fiona, for joining me. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Well, thank you so much. I've enjoyed it. That's great. Thank you.